And welcome to ZekeTalk. It's the final week of September for us. Is that correct? No, it's not.
No,
it's not.
we're going into that again. No. Check
No,
my calendar here.
Don't check your calendar. We'll have another show next week.
I have the calendar right here, you know.
Oh, yeah. That's a nice calendar.
Yes, it's the accordion babes pinup calendar. So.
Excellent.
Weird Al approved.
Wow.
Oh, was there a little sticker of Weird Al on the cover? Like,
no, but there was a picture of him on Instagram with this copy.
Is he in the calendar?
No, he is not.
Is his birthday?
Several other fine accordionists are. So.
Is that lady in the picture there a fine accordion player, or is she just?
Yes, she is. Yes.
Are you in this calendar, Mike?
No, I am not.
Okay.
Mike is a fine accordionist. For those who don't know, he has an accordion, and we used to say has accordion will travel. This is back years ago. The wedding of our friends Todd and Paulette Whaley here in St. Louis. They were getting married. This is back in the late '90s, and they'd hired Mike to be the photographer. And we got to the reception, and the music that we spent all night recording onto cassette tapes, for the reception, somebody forgot them, and they were like across town, and it would have taken like 2 hours to go get them. So we're like, well, what do we do? And everybody's standing around, and there's no music, and it was just kind of awkward, we're in this big banquet hall, and I should add, in Renaissance garb. There was a Renaissance themed wedding, so
that makes the story.
Yeah. I'm dressed as Prince Valiant over here, with my family crest that his future mother-in-law stitched. Everybody's family crest for the groomsmen and all the, and so then we're just like, what do we do? And Mike goes to his car, pops the trunk, and gets out his accordion, and comes in. And we sit down, and I sat next to him. We played Yellow Submarine. I sang, and Mike played Yellow Submarine on the accordion. And we didn't bother getting permission from the couple.
I think that was a wise move.
Yeah, it was. We just did it. And we figured, well, it's easier to ask forgiveness than, and I was like, I stayed up all night making those tapes. We're having music in here, whatever they think. So,
please tell me there are pictures from this.
Well, Mike was the photographer, and he had to set down the camera to play the accordion.
Sure.
So you'll have to take our word for it.
I can back up. Every word is true.
Yeah. And now they think it's cool now. I don't know what they thought then. It's kind of hard to tell that night. But
I seem to recall doing that to several weddings in the late '90s. But it was a simpler time.
It really was. Yeah, we didn't get booked for more. That was the thing.
Yeah.
But anyhow, we're not here to talk about that, are we?
No, we're not. We're here to talk Disney. And to introduce myself, I am Michael Anderson, a filmmaker and semi-failed animator, or semi-succeeded.
Very nice.
No, I did take animation class, and I animated a couple little projects, and
the epic Siege of Everett.
Yes. That's one of them, but actual animation with cells and everything, and the camera ate the film, the little old 16mm Bolex thing, and I did it twice. I did the step-by-step twice.
Oh,
and both times the camera ate it. So that was the end of my animation career. So Disney, you may have dodged a bullet.
I took the same class, and my version of that isn't quite the same thing. I wound up with a project. It wasn't any good, I don't think, but it was animation, and it was done. It was the cell animation project where we had to paint individual cells, like tons of cells. Like, just, and I was, somehow I got the due date wrong for the final project. So I painted all these cells and I put them all over the whole basement, all over the whole house. They were drying everywhere. I stayed up all night and all day just cramming to get this done because I was convinced that it was due like the end of the week. And I got it done and I dragged myself in. I was exhausted. And I came in and I sat it down and I'm like, here's mine. And I'm looking, where's everybody else's? I'm like, oh, that's due like in 3 weeks. and that was it for me. I never again. I was like burned out for life.
I remember that day. You just ripped them all up, and you're like, "Yeah, that's it."
You danced on their corpses. Ah!
I don't understand how that happened. I mean, it should be a good thing, but instead it was just like, what? Anyway, Kristin, welcome back.
It's nice to be back. Oh,
whoa!
With special cat. Sorry.
You don't even have to sing, and the animals show up.
Yes. Well, just the one, really.
Wow.
That was a rare appearance by Jimmy, our cat. Well, one of them. The other one may show up at some point. He's usually terrified of everything, so I'm surprised he got up here, really.
That was pretty terrifying right there.
He likes the accordion. He's a big fan.
A giant cat. Okay. All right. Here we are. Disney.
Yes.
What were we talking about last time you were here? We
Doctor Who, The Tick, and something else.
Oh, right. The Tick and Doctor Who. That was what it was.
And Mystery Science Theater 3000, because we'd just been to the Misty thing.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
None of that tonight.
None of that tonight. Well,
yeah.
A little bit.
All Disney and strange reminiscences from our past.
Well, we can build on that because I've been a Disney fan a long time. So many strange things have happened.
Yeah. Right. Now, I've been a Disney fan for a long time as well, and it's probably fair to say most folks have been, assuming that they're okay with Disney at all.
Yeah.
One of the curious things about Walt Disney Animation is, to me, how it's just so intensely scrutinized. Since it's like considered something for kids, like parent groups and everybody under the sun, political organizations and social organizations, and everybody likes to weigh in on how the latest Disney film or any Disney films represent whatever their values are. And man, those movies get raked over the coals.
Nothing can stand up to that scrutiny. It's like, anything that they can find, it's like, an errant knee suddenly becomes a whole rumor mill. So,
right, true. There are those cases.
Yes.
But I'm talking about just general things like the portrayal of the princesses and how that's changed over the years.
Yes.
Okay. So we'll start there. I imagine, unless you started somehow earlier.
No. Well, we're currently the movie project at my house is rewatching the Disney canon in order, basically, as they were released. So we started with Snow White, which was the first American-made full-length animated movie. There have been other contenders from like Germany and Switzerland, I don't know, Sweden maybe? Somewhere else in Europe.
Possibly.
For a full-length animated movie, but it was certainly the first American-made full-length animated movie, and it wasn't particularly intended for children. That's the other thing. I mean, all the big stars were there at that premiere. Cary Grant was there. It was just, it was a big deal at the time.
It really was. And I'll tell you right now, I'm a big fan of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs just as a film, as a piece of work, as art.
It's beautiful. That's
it really
the thing.
is.
It really is gorgeous. And one of the funny things is I expected not to like it. I don't like her at all. And that's a cultural change, I think, because her voice just drives me straight up a tree. But we made a rule that we were going to watch the movie. We weren't going to play with our phones, and we weren't going to, do cross stitch or any sort of craft project. We weren't possibly going to, well, popcorn was allowed, but we weren't going to go and make a sandwich. And we watched the movie, and it was really easy to do. They do grab your attention somehow, and it's even ones that I was thinking, okay, fine, Snow White, fine, Dumbo, really, Dumbo? Okay, it's cute, it's really cute. No, we were shedding tears. It was awful. As art, they stand up really well. As a cultural presence, sometimes maybe not.
What do you mean by that?
Well, I'm thinking more of the voice, and certainly the way the princesses, the way the female figures are portrayed, is sometimes difficult for a modern audience. Let's just put it that way. Really, the difficult ones are Sleeping Beauty and Snow White. I will go to the mat for Cinderella. I think she's fabulous, but
Well, I was going to say both Cinderella and both Sleeping Beauty and Snow White. The main thing that happens in their tales is they fall asleep.
Yeah, it's difficult to create a feminist icon out of that. That's a hard sell.
Yeah.
Although, sorry.
No, go right ahead. I was just going to say that wasn't on anyone's agenda then.
No, it wasn't on anyone's agenda. They were making art, which is something to be respected in its own right.
And again, these are based on folk tales, and for whatever reason, it's the folk tales that have resonated and sort of gotten handed down. There were a lot of them where the female heroines fell asleep back then. So
yeah,
we can talk about why it was a thing, but it was definitely a thing.
It was a thing. Well,
yeah.
My take on Snow White, not that you asked, but
Tell me.
I've kind of come to the conclusion that is one of the very few movies ever made that our world, our culture, would be somehow different, maybe a lot different, if it hadn't been made. If Snow White hadn't been that first movie and a success. Because when Walt Disney went to make that film, he was coming from, it was perceived as, it was black and white, short movies, pretty rudimentary stuff of Mickey Mouse and the characters around there. They were starting to get into color. They were starting to get into some very artistic, animated work that pushed the limits farther than anybody had thought before, like The Old Mill.
Mm-hmm.
If you've seen that short, it's astonishing.
Yeah.
But Snow White, is talked about as Disney's folly in the couple of years that they were making it. And what is he doing? He's making a feature-length animated movie in color, and it's a musical? What? That's all of that combined. It was supposed to be just the Titanic of movies, and it was anything but. It was a major success and enabled him to keep going and make a lot of other films, and of course, for better or for worse, kind of like George Lucas with Star Wars, Snow White cast the mold of what people wanted more of from Walt Disney.
Mm.
This is true, and you can see that at the beginning, at least, he didn't give it to them, and this may have been because that the long gestation period of animation, but after that, the next movie I believe was Pinocchio.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Are we done with Snow White? By the way, Kristin, did you have any other thoughts on that one?
I think the storytelling ability of the Walt Disney Studios and Walt Disney in particular really comes through there. That is, the story is the amazing thing. It's certainly not the casting of her voice. Or really if you look at the completely human figures of the Prince and Snow White, you're gone again. You're back.
You're
okay.
back.
I did that.
Okay, you did that. Okay.
Everybody doesn't need to see me blow my nose real hard.
Oh, come on. It's great entertainment value. One of the first films was The Sneeze. You know that.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Yeah.
The sneeze, whatever.
But the human figures there were made with a process called rotoscope, so they're a little too human. They're a little wrong. The Prince and Snow White's faces are just a little wrong, and it's really the dwarves that come through as the characters. And I think they learned from that. You can see that in the next film, how they learned from that. We can make really realistic figures, but they're not going to look right. So we're going to exaggerate a little bit, and we're going to change a little bit. And every single thing, and that's the amazing thing, when you watch them in order, you see how it grows. You see what they took from the first film and moved to the second film, and what they took from the second film and moved to the third, every single time it grows.
Absolutely.
And then we hit the 70s and it kind of goes back again.
Right. Well, and they did mine Snow White over the years in other films. And,
yes.
But like literally they would trace their own sequences because that one was so impeccable. Why do the work again?
Mm-hmm.
Just steal this shot and draw over it with a new character.
Yeah.
So that happened. That's much later for Disney. But this is a film that not only did it inspire the ongoing cultural legacy of Disney princesses, which is this thorn in the side of every parent who has a little girl. I personally don't feel that way. It's a phase. They all seem to go through it. Even the parents that we know that decided they're going to shelter their kids from Disney princesses and they're not going to do it. Somehow the kids find it anyway. So, go figure. It's just one of those weird inevitabilities. Not only did Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs foster this weird Disney princess culture, but also, it influenced, some other things you might not consider, like Dario Argento, the Italian horror director of Suspiria. His masterpiece, Suspiria, this is very gory horror film. This phantasmagorical movie, directly inspired by Snow White, if you hear him tell it. So that's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's the thing I do. Sorry. Okay. I don't think people consider the darkness that is inherent, particularly in the early movies. We were talking briefly about Pinocchio earlier.
Right.
No, I was going to say, Snow White was the first movie that I ever saw when I was, 4 years old. Believe me, I knew the darkness of the movie.
It does have a really weird sequence when she runs through the woods, doesn't it? That's very strange things going on there. Yeah.
The trees.
The trees and the logs that become alligators, and ooh.
Yeah.
Easy to scare you when you're small because you believe in stuff.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, the first film I ever saw, I think, it was either this one or Superman the movie.
Mm-hmm.
First film I remember seeing in a theater is Pinocchio.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not that old. This was on a re-release.
Yes.
Pinocchio came out in 1940. I don't know the year for that one. Snow White is 1937. We should just say that.
Yeah.
Hang on here. No, I don't have an exact year on this, but
that's probably about right. You're not far wrong.
Thank you.
Mm.
Yeah. So Pinocchio, what did you? How was that going through it again?
I still can't watch all of Pinocchio. I was traumatized as a small child because the whale is the single most frightening thing I've ever seen in my life, and continues to be apparently. There is a story, to hear my father tell it, when I was about 4, we went to see Pinocchio. And at the pivotal moment when the whale goes to swallow them again and rushes right out of the screen at you, apparently I was moved to stand up in my chair in the movie theater and scream, "Swim, Pinocchio, swim!" at the screen. That can't possibly be how it happened. First of all, it wasn't re-released in the year that I was 4. I would have been at least 6. And I don't know about the rest of it, but I am very frightened of whales to this day. Not real whales, animated whales. And just recently we had a Disney retrospective at the library where I work. And we watched Pinocchio, and I was thinking, okay, I'm going to watch it this time. I'm going to look right at that whale. Not going to scare me. No, I was under the table. So I was like,
well, it's been many years since I've seen Pinocchio, but I remember, like, the ribs of the whale, like it's like a prison.
Yeah.
This weird cavernous
inside of a whale.
Yeah, yeah. And they build a fire.
Yes.
So that the whale will sneeze them out.
His huge teeth. As Jiminy Cricket floats past them in a little bottle thing. It's just...
But yeah,
the first time we went to Disneyland, there is actually something called the Storybook Canal Boats, where you board a little boat and you float past scenes that they've recreated from the movie. So you float past the old mill, and you float past... Sleeping Beauty's castle, I think, in miniature. And then at one point you turn around the bend and there's Monstro, and you actually float into his mouth. And I came unglued at Disneyland. I was about probably 7 at that point. But yeah, I was ready to swim for it. I was going over the side of this boat.
Swim for it, Kristin.
Oh yeah. It's even worse at night. His eyes light up red, and it's just awful.
Wow.
But let's scare the children.
Yeah.
For the kids.
That's if the skeleton dance back there didn't get you. This
certainly will. Pinocchio is a very dark movie, and that was surprising when we watched it again. I mean, it's even worse when you're an adult looking at it, and Geppetto looking for his lost child as the carriage carrying Pinocchio goes past him in the street as he's standing there in the rain. I mean, it's just awful. So that's another one that's maybe worse when you're an adult.
Yeah.
The thing about Pinocchio is a lot of it seems to be operating on sort of a dream logic. It's like, so much of the plot is like, if you try to say what actually happens in the movie, it just sounds like a bad dream that you had last night, where it's like, I was on this island with actors, and all of a sudden I was turning into a donkey, and then there's this whale.
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
And my nose was growing, man.
Yes.
My nose was growing every time I told a lie.
And you were a wooden puppet.
Yes. I had joints, and my head could go all the way around in a circle.
Right.
And there was a cricket that talked.
And, well, it's the film that gave us When You Wish Upon a Star.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is, of course, the Disney's signature song.
Mm-hmm. Everything plays When You Wish Upon a Star, and yeah, it's the other thing that was interesting when we rewatched these movies, and particularly in reference to When You Wish Upon a Star, is how much religion there is in them. How many times people pray for things, and Geppetto is kind of the major example. Snow White prays too. She
That's true.
says good, she says her evening prayers before she falls asleep. But yeah, Geppetto praying at the window and wishing upon a star, but clearly in the posture of prayer, was surprising how often that came up.
Right. And I wonder when the cutoff of that sort of thing coming into these films is. I would guess probably fairly soon.
Yeah.
As far as your one goes.
Yeah. I mean, you don't see it a lot. Really, when Walt leaves, when Walt dies, there's not a lot of prayer after that.
Right.
And there's not a lot of, appeal to providence or anything or that kind of thing. So
the whimsy and magic, so to speak.
Yeah, there's a lot. Well, okay, this is going to sound sort of awful, but there's a switch to where's the money going to come from? It's kind of like the studio, and that's actually, now that I say that, that's completely fair. The studio lost confidence when Walt died, because he was always the guy that says, we can do this, and the money will come. It won't matter. We're just going to do it anyway, And Roy was the guy who was saying, where is the money going to come from? And then Roy was in charge, and it's like, no, the money's going to come first, and then we'll make the movie.
Right, yeah, and we have to make movies that work.
Yeah, that work, and there's a lot less of the fate is kind,
right,
kind of mentality.
Yeah.
Oh, I will so quote that at you. You have no idea.
Yeah, a lot less of that. Walt, really was a swing for the fences kind of guy.
Yeah.
Let's make something artistic. Let's make Fantasia.
Let's make Fantasia.
Yeah.
That's a weird one, isn't it?
It is, yes.
Well, that's next, yes.
Yeah. Looking over the list of the movies, I was surprised that it came so soon.
Yeah.
I expected that to be fifth or sixth. It's like after they've had a lot of hits on their under their belt. Let's try something different. But no, that was like number 3. That was straight out of the gate.
Yeah, that was actually the third movie they started to make, but Dumbo got made because Fantasia was taking so much money and so much time, and they recorded that. Those are all original recordings for that. Was it the London Philharmonic? I'm not sure which orchestra now actually did the recordings, but
for Fantasia.
For Fantasia.
Yes.
But they hired the orchestra. Rearranging some of these pieces. Stravinsky was famously sort of miffed at them for redoing.
It was the Philadelphia Orchestra.
There you go. But they got the, I can't remember his name, the gentleman who does the linking segments in Fantasia.
Leopold Stokowski.
No, not the conductor.
No, it was
the other guy.
The other guy.
I can't remember his name right now either, but he was prominent.
Deems Taylor.
There you go.
Deems Taylor, yeah.
And he was a prominent radio personality.
Correct.
People would have recognized his voice. They wouldn't have known what he looked like when he appeared on the screen, but the minute he started talking, people knew who he was. So all this money is pouring into this project that's taking forever. So they made this little movie about an elephant. Which, if you look at it, is not. There are parts of it that are kind of rough compared to things that went before and things that'll come after. Like Bambi is beautiful, very painterly the whole way through. But Dumbo is kind of rough, and it was just like, let's make this, and we can do this really quickly, and it will make money, and it did. It wasn't a huge success along the lines of Snow White, but it was profitable. So, yeah, but Fantasia was the masterpiece that they were going to make, and they made, and no one liked.
Right. Famously, it didn't clear a profit.
No.
Until the psychedelic age, many years later.
Yeah.
When college students found it on a re-release and would trip acid while watching it, you know. And that's
really trippy even without the acid.
Right. No, I mean, who did acid for that one? And that's it's a crazy and fantastic movie. And it is one of my favorites.
Oh yeah.
And I love that that's what Walt wanted to do. He saw it as this ongoing thing where every 5 or so years they would re-release Fantasia, and they'd keep what worked and switch out what didn't with new segments of music that they would animate to, and it would evolve like a symphony performance in real life, that would just go on and on and on.
It's a beautiful idea. It's a gorgeous idea.
And the failure of that film, I think, permanently changed, it locked in the course of Walt Disney Animation Studios for good, of being this family-friendly princess, everything that Snow White on the surface is.
Yeah.
And I think that's, the failure of Fantasia is to blame for that pigeonholing occurring.
That's very true. I never thought about that before, but that is very true.
I mean, think of what the world would be like if Fantasia had been a big hit, and Disney had gone on to just make all kinds of other weird movies like Fantasia from there on out.
Well, if you look at the history of Disney, after they do Fantasia, then they do Dumbo and Bambi, and after that, that's 1942. After that, it's nothing but like compilation movies, for like the next 8 years.
Do you know why that is?
Make My Music, Fun and Fancy Free, Melody Time, Three Caballeros.
Right. And I don't want to plow over Bambi here. But I will say, I mean, Kristin, I don't want to steal any thunder from you if you've read up on this or not, but there are actually eras of Disney animation. You know about this?
Yeah. I've seen a couple different lists of them, of where the movies kind of break into.
Right, right. We're talking about the original classic era.
Yeah.
Which is the 5 that we've mentioned thus far: Snow White, Pinocchio, Fantasia, Dumbo, and Bambi. Those are the seminal big 5, as far as myself and a lot of others are concerned.
Yeah.
Because those are the 5 that Walt himself was very much personally invested in. They were artistic works of heart and soul and blood and sweat, and he threw himself and his guys into those films, those 5 movies. And after that, there was a strike, and there was a war, and Walt's animators went on strike, and it sent him into a nervous breakdown, and he had to leave for a while. And he physically had to leave. He went around the world on a trip, and got away from work. And work at the studios continued without him, and he was pretty much a figurehead from then on, with one exception. much, much later. And you know what that was? The movie that Walt Disney threw himself into later, beyond all those five, Mary Poppins.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
And that was in the 60s. That was it. Those are the actual Walt Disney movies.
Yeah.
So we're, with Bambi, once we're done talking about Bambi, Walt was around, he was like, he'd come in and okay things, but his heart wasn't really in it anymore, probably.
Yeah, he kind of, well, and the Walt Disney brand, for lack of a better word, had diversified at that point. So his big project became Disneyland. And then there were TV things, and then there were, yeah. And then the strike was a personal blow, which could have been handled better on all sides, but that's, I'm thinking that Walt Disney as a person was not an easy person to work with, ever. So
Walt Disney as a person, what they say is you could go into Walt's office every day for like 60 days in a row, and you'd get a different Walt every time.
Mm-hmm.
You just didn't know. So he was not an easy person.
No.
But he had a way of getting people to give him what he wanted.
Mm-hmm.
They still wanted to please him. And that's very important. So, so Bambi, though.
Bambi.
Yeah.
Man is in the forest.
I knew what was coming in Bambi, which is the death of Bambi's mother. This is something that was inescapable in the culture. You just know that that's part of the movie before you ever see the movie. And I don't think I saw it until I was probably, I don't know, 3rd or 4th grade. I mean, I was getting a little old for, wanting to go see the latest Disney movies.
Mm-hmm.
And I was a little scared. I was scared to see it. I didn't want to see this, Bambi's mother get killed, or at least see the, you know what I mean? We don't see it.
Yeah.
But, I went and saw it at a dollar show when on a re-release, and it was great. It was just, I remember it being great. I just remember the movie delivering like on every level for me at that age, at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't watched it since. And I don't know why that is.
That was one of the movies that we did during the retrospective. I can't recommend that you watch it again. For the reason, not a lot happens in this movie. Okay? It is beautiful. I mean, it is unspeakably gorgeous. It is a lovely movie. It's mostly scenery, and aside from that scene, there's no plot. I mean, there's like 10 minutes of plot at the end, and there's no plot.
So you're not sure why we're still watching Bambi grow up?
I am sure why we're still watching Bambi, because it's beautiful, and I think little kids really get it. There were a few children at the screening. They were mesmerized. They could not look away. I think that has a lot to do with the voices, because all the children were used for the voices. Those are not voice actors being children. Those are children being kids, which sometimes futzes with the delivery. There are some things that you listen to now and go, what? But as a child, I think you respond immediately to those voices because you know that they're kids. So you're going to buy it completely. An interesting thing about this one, we were Mike and I earlier were talking about Pinocchio and the source material for Pinocchio. There is a source material for Bambi. There's a book by Felix Stalton. I think I'm saying his last name correctly. It is translated from Austrian, I believe, and obviously was set in the German forests originally. Was not an American thing at all. And that book is vicious. I mean, it's worse than Jungle Book. It is really, really emotionally traumatizing. So when you read it when you're small, because it's the Bambi, the Disney movie, you know, wow, you were not prepared for some of the stuff that goes on there.
Yeah.
But it's another one of those cases where they've taken this source material and made something almost entirely different, and yet very wonderful in its own right. But as an adult, I got to tell you, that movie has no plot. There's a lot of stuff that goes on in the book that really they could not have shown, but a lot more plot in the book.
I don't know, that lack of a plot is not a instant deterrent for me. If other things are holding my attention, as you say that they do, and there's the cat again. For those watching the video, cat just walked past.
Yeah, that was not. Do not adjust your screen. That was my cat, Jimmy. Hello, Jimmy. Yeah. Say hi.
Hey, there's a kitty. Good kitty. Yeah. Get lost. Okay. Yeah. So I'm allergic to them.
Okay. Well, he's probably not going to contaminate the screen. I don't know. Jen's allergic to them too, Mike. You might want to wipe down after this.
Right.
I will.
Just so you know. Well, okay. So what were we talking about? Disney.
Disney. And
right. That's not a big deal to me because, you know, I don't know. I'm curious to look at it again. My own kids, and I have 4 kids, they're, you know, they watch these movies. You know, I made a point in my collecting of films. I made a point of never missing a Disney release because, you know, heaven forbid it goes into this vault and and we can't have it anymore.
Yeah.
And they stop making discs or something. You know, now they're making them all on Blu-ray. So okay, you know, they're slowly but surely buying them all again. But yeah, you know, buying them again and hoping that the company doesn't pull some revisionist stuff on them, which they do sometimes now.
Sometimes they do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Fantasia has been edited, I know.
Yeah, Fantasia. I've held on to my VHS of Fantasia just because certain scenes got color timed a little differently to make skin tones a little less racial caricature. Other things, I know there was like a extreme zoom in on Fantasia for a few shots. I think to get rid of like nymph nudity or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They were all the in the pastoral with the centaurs and the lady centaurs. All the lady centaurs got tops.
Yeah. Suddenly.
And, yeah.
But they didn't always have them.
They didn't always have them, no, but they do now. Yeah.
So
the naked nymphs in the Nutcracker Suite, that part got fuzzed a little bit.
right. Like I said, in one case, it was actually zoomed in to the other half of the screen. I think that was undone for the DVD. I'm not sure how it works. It's all fuzzy in my brain now, but you know, this is all widely chronicled by animation historians online and in books elsewhere. So if anyone's interested in this sort of thing, the information is certainly out there.
Yeah.
For how these films have been tinkered with by the company that owns them. In the interest of not offending us.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing we were talking about earlier, that, you know, I mean, there are the moral guardians that have Disney in their sights. You know, it's like, you know, any slightest misstep is just, you know, pounced upon. And, you know, things like nymphs that, nymph boobies. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
You know, suddenly that's the most important thing that need to be stopped.
Right. Yeah.
Well,
So,
but we can all go over to Jim's if we want to see nymph nudity. So
apparently,
have
I
that.
don't remember what I've got anymore. My kids watched Fantasia once, and that was enough for now. Maybe they'll care later.
Yeah, tell them to watch it in college when they're stoned on acid. So
there you go.
Yeah, yeah. We'll make sure the Blu-ray player's still working. And you know, they did watch Pinocchio, and would not look at that one again. That did not go well. I don't care. And you know, Dumbo and Snow White are favorites, and I don't know how Bambi played. And those are, like I said, those are the big five.
Yeah.
What, you know, like we said, once you get past that, we get the next era on the list I'm looking at is called the package era, which is 1943 through 1949.
Mm-hmm.
With
well, Bond kind of fell out of the European market since they had other things on their mind. So.
Right. Well, the package era, what we're talking about here are these feature films that are compilations of shorter animations, basically. Would you agree that that's what we're talking about?
That's what we're talking about.
Okay.
Fun and fancy free.
Some of them have some of the weirdest crap you will ever see on the screen. Yeah.
Did you watch?
Amigos.
No, Turner Classic Movies has been doing their Disney Vault. They do it once a month, and they've been showing some of these package movies. Like a couple months ago, they did Ichabod and Mr. Toad. They did the Three Caballeros and the Saludos Amigos. And of course, they've also been showing a lot of the 1970s live action. They did a Freaky Friday Candle Shoe double feature last week, as a matter of fact, that we've been watching. But that's a different era and live action. But no, they've been digging up a lot of these older, you know, package movies that, I mean, they aren't considered classics. They really aren't promoted that much. But yeah, for like 8 years after the big five, they were sort of in retreat because of the war and because of everything else. They were like, you know, let's just cobble stuff together and make them into a movie. And the only one really of note is Song of the South, and that's because of its infamy, really.
You can't see that anymore.
Nope.
Yeah, looking at my list, I don't think whoever made this list, they didn't even include that. What year is Song of the South? Isn't that from the 40s?
It's 1946, yeah.
Okay, so that should be squarely in this era, which I've got Saludos Amigos here, Three Caballeros, Make Mine Music, Fun and Fancy Free, Melody Time, and The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad. Those are the ones listed here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Song of the South is not, strictly speaking, animation, though.
Yeah, it's a combination of live action and animation. So
the predominance of it is really live action.
Yeah.
I saw that in the theater at some point.
As did I.
Me too, twice.
I remember seeing that in the theater. Really?
Yeah, I saw it in, I want to say 1980, 81, around there when it came out. Then they released it again 7 years later, and I saw it then. And I almost didn't, because I'd seen it already, and I was, you know, junior high age. But my dad, you know, he grew up on that film, and you know, he really liked the Brer Rabbit, Brer Fox, Brer Bear stuff, and he really liked Brer Bear a lot. You know, this lumbering dope of a character with a club. He just thought that was the funniest thing. So we went again, and yeah, I know that the problems people have with that movie are legitimate problems.
Oh yeah.
But that said, I remember liking it, and I'm of the opinion that, you know, for better or for worse, the movie should at least be made available.
Yeah.
To at least adult collectors and those of us.
Yeah, it's one of those things. I mean, if you can get Birth of a Nation, you should be able to get Song of the South. Nothing else for its animation history.
Right.
But yes, definitely put the introduction and the disclaimers and everything like that, because it is problematic. But
yeah, Whoopi Goldberg was advocating for the re-release of Song of the South recently. You know, she's done a lot of these disclaimers for Warner Brothers cartoons and things.
Oh, sorry, different cat.
How many cats are in there? Oh my goodness!
Just the two. Just the two.
So yeah, I did go Splash Mountain. That's the ride at Disney World.
It's odd that this movie is not available when there is an attraction, a major attraction.
Yeah.
Based on it.
Right, and you know, to go there, you come out and the gift shop that it dumps you into, they're the Splash Mountain characters.
Yes. It's entirely possible we're in one of those situations where the vast majority, well, not the vast majority, but the majority of the public does not know there's a movie that this is based on.
And that's just what they want.
Yeah. Which I understand, and I get it. I really do. Because I think, in a way, Disney has become sort of the arbitrator of not just kids' culture, but American culture in a big way.
Absolutely.
So I think that's why the watchdog groups are always after it. I think that's why it gets scrutinized the way it does.
Yeah.
We are kind of admitting that, okay, yeah, Disney rules the culture.
Yeah. Certainly with the acquisition of something like Pixar and Lucasfilm and Marvel and everything I like. They own the culture.
Ruined it. They ruined it all.
No, they're in the process of ruining it. I don't think it's ruined just yet. But you know, but as far as something like Splash Mountain goes, I predict in a few years they'll gut that thing and make it into Moana the ride. You know, or something like that. They'll redress that. You think it'll stay as it is?
I think it'll stay as it is, in all honesty. Because, and not for want of trying, but they're going to have to make a movie that's set in the American West that is not Home on the Range, because we don't talk about that. There have been some clunkers, and that's one of them. But because of the theming and the place and where it is, you're going to have to, Moana would be too far of a stretch. I mean, it's squarely in the middle of Frontierland.
Yeah, no, you're right.
I would personally be all for Moana, the ride, but I love Moana. Love it.
I was just using that as an example. It doesn't have to be Moana, but you know what I mean.
I know. It might well be, or they'll just go ahead and release the thing with the big disclaimer and say, okay, you know, this is what happened at this time. It was a time in history where this seemed like acceptable behavior. We know it's not. And didn't Warner Brothers do something like that for some of their cartoon shorts where they were? Yeah,
that's what I was referring to. You know, it was wrong then and it is wrong now. But to erase it would be to admit that, to say that it never happened, and that's not right. So that's the disclaimer they stick on the old Warner Brothers Golden Collection sets.
And I think that would be perfectly. That would be a good thing for this movie because it existed. And the animation was kind of fun. I don't remember liking the live action parts at all. I didn't think they had much of a. They weren't gripping in any way.
Yeah, you had to get through them. They were all right.
Yeah.
They're fine
You know, it's very southern.
as filler. Yeah.
So here we are. We're talking about the one movie not on the actual list.
Yeah.
Mike, is it on your list? You said you were consulting a list of canonized.
I was consulting the Wikipedia list of Disney theatrical animated features.
And Song of the South?
Song of the South is listed.
Okay. Is Mary Poppins listed?
It is not.
Okay. Interesting. I guess that's the cutoff, since Song of the South has entire sequence. It's either animated or live action, if I remember right.
I think there's one. Mr. Bluebird does appear in the live action parts, I think, but
Yes.
that's it. That's
That's
it.
really it. That's really it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, let's see. How much we probably should have an eye to wrapping this up pretty soon.
Okay.
The next era is known as the neoclassical era, and that's 1950 through 59. And I'll just give you the list here. And Kristin, you can, seize on whichever of these you're most interested in. Cinderella, Alice in Wonderland, Peter Pan, Lady and the Tramp, and Sleeping Beauty.
Cinderella, I love. I will freely admit that. Walt Disney himself called this transformation scene where the fairy godmother gives Cinderella her dress one of his favorite pieces of animation. Again, it's a gorgeous movie. Disney does pretty really well. But I think Cinderella gets a bad rap for not participating in her story more often, if that makes sense. She seems to get most of the brunt of the Disney princess hate or dislike that's out there.
Yeah.
I don't think that's fair at all.
I agree. I don't understand it.
She at least stays awake the entire movie. Come on.
Yeah. But the thing is, I mean, she is obviously in need of some psychiatric help because she's dressing mice, which is problematic. But there's probably that probably indicates some level of traumatic dissonance in her life. However, she's kind to people that have no way to repay her, and that's a good value for people. Not girls, not boys, people. That's a good value for people. And they come and save her at the end when she wasn't looking for it. So, it is virtue rewarded in its purest form because she had nothing to gain from it. And in the end, she had everything to gain from it. The prince is an idiot because he can't recognize the girl he danced with all night. On the other hand, he doesn't go out looking for her either, which is also kind of weird.
To do it.
But Sleeping Beauty is interesting from a princess standpoint in the fact that she's not present for most of her film. But if you look at that film, all of the major plot points, with the exception of fighting the dragon, and even there we can argue about that, are driven by female characters. The prince doesn't really do much. It's her trio of fairy godmothers and Maleficent.
Yeah.
Maleficent is a great villainess.
Oh, yeah.
But even the prince doesn't really... I mean, he gets handed his sword by Merryweather, I think. But by one of the fairy godmothers. So they arm him. They're behind this whole plot. They're the driving engines of this movie, which is an interesting thing in the sense of when it was made and how we usually think of those kinds of movies.
Right.
So, well, that's an interesting thing.
Of the films on this list,
mm-hmm.
I am far and away a huge admirer and fan of Sleeping Beauty the most. That is the one that just enamors me.
Mm-hmm.
It's such a beautiful film, and with Lady and the Tramp before it, Disney's getting into the widescreen phenomenon of the 1950s.
Mm-hmm.
And with Sleeping Beauty, they just went in full bore.
Oh yeah.
And it's just so immaculate and elaborate, and it really is this company saying, okay, we're going to go back to the beginning with Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs,
Mm-hmm.
and we're going to evoke that, and we're going to do it in with technical grandeur for 1959, for now, the now of then.
Yeah.
And they just spent so much money on it, and they put so much resources into it, and it did not do well at the box office. And it was a failure from a business perspective, and that set the course for the next wave, which we'll get to at some point.
In part 2 of the Disney retrospective.
But Mike, what do you think?
No, Sleeping Beauty, and yeah, it is gorgeous. And even though when you read the plot description, it sounds like Disney, mining the best bits from Cinderella and Snow White. It's you take the fairy godmothers, it's like, we had one, we'll give them 3. You had the evil queen and Snow White, so you create Maleficent. Sure. Can never say her
now
name,
she has
right?
magic. Aha!
Yes, haha. And the whole heroine gets put on a spell and falls asleep and has to be saved by the prince. So, in a way, it feels a bit like, them ransacking some of the best plot points, but putting them together in a new way that is, technically, much better and, than what has been done previously, like really upping their game, as far as the backgrounds and, the sort of medieval inspired, artwork that they tried to evoke. So, I think that it's very admirable, and yes, it shouldn't work nearly as well as it does, but it does.
It really does. I mean, it really does.
Is
another weird little bit. This could also be called the era of the Disney drunk. I mean, we had a little bit of Disney drunk in Dumbo and Pinocchio, but now there are a lot of drunken characters wandering around in surprising ways. There's the minstrel that gets completely blasted in Sleeping Beauty, and I've forgotten who does it in Lady and the Tramp, but somebody does. There's in the Aristocats, there'll be there's a drunken goose who's actually one of my favorite parts of that movie. There's just suddenly there's a lot more booze flowing.
And Peter Pan. I mean, there seems like there'd be drinking in that somewhere.
Yeah. Well, there is a strangely exploding. Yeah, the pirates get a little sloshed. There is the bad bomb, but
Alice in Wonderland.
Okay, we can't. Yeah, she just eats and drinks everything in the hopes that something will solve her problems. So
right, that's one big drug trip.
Alice in Wonderland, Disney didn't like that one. He thought there was no heart to that movie, and that's interesting.
What do you think of that? Do you agree with that or not? Because I kind of do. I never have warmed up to this movie, Alice in Wonderland. I've tried in several phases of life, and it doesn't ever do anything for me.
Alice in Wonderland is a tough nut to crack. It's one of these, books that you read it and it's brilliant, and trying to translate it into film or television or anything like that, it's just, they all fail in different ways. It's like, for a while there, I was watching like all different adaptations of Alice in Wonderland to see which was the best, and the answer is really none of them. It's like the ones that are best are actually the ones that stray, like furthest from the original text.
Yeah.
The BBC did a trippy black and white version with like Peter Sellers and It's really interesting.
Yeah.
Where the young Schwarzmacher animated one where the taxidermy rabbit that has bits of falling off all the time.
Cool.
It's nightmare fuel.
Wow.
Yes.
Tim Burton's horrible 3D one in from 2009, I think.
Yes.
My gosh, that's unwatchable. You know, I'd still give the tip of the hat to this animated Walt Disney animated version of Alice in Wonderland for all the different attempts that Mike's talking about. You know, that we, but that said, it's still not. I don't know, interesting observation that they all fail for different reasons.
Yeah,
it's a lesson they tried. They really did.
Yeah. And, you know, part of it also is, I mean, really the best way to read Alice in Wonderland these days. I mean, you can read it, and you can get a lot out of it, but there's an animated version because so much of it, like so many of the poems and songs in it are actually parodies of songs and, you know, poems of the era that little children were forced to read. So little children of the era would know, oh, this, you know, it's like reading a Weird Al Yankovic parody without knowing the source material. It's like, this is amusing, but, you know, you're missing a whole different level of it. And you know, they have the footnotes, and you don't really get that. And the other thing is that, you know, so much of it, you know, Lewis Carroll, a mathematician, a lot of it is making fun of esoteric concepts like mathematics and things like that. And you don't really get that. You know, he deliberately didn't really put a heart into it, and people try to put heart into it. They really try. You know, it's like, you know, there's just this forced heartwarming moments that they try to just jam into it, and they just stick out like it doesn't work.
No.
I think that the Disney one, where it does succeed, is actually, well, not the end, because the end is terrible, but I think my heart kind of did go out to Alice briefly when she sings, "I gave myself very good advice, but I very seldom follow it." I mean, that's, when you get older, you kind of look at that and go, oh yeah, we've been there, haven't we? Yeah, we have.
Well, here's scale, animation and scale. That's a tough thing to do. To sell, you know, a character is getting bigger and smaller.
Yeah.
And, you know, I remember it pulling it off.
Yeah. And that's the other thing. The animation in this is very, very good. The shuffling of the cards, the way the card guards, the Queen of Hearts guards are all a pack of cards, and they shuffle themselves and they fan themselves out, and there are fountains of cards coming up, and that was all hand drawn. That's all hand drawn animation. And I've forgotten the number of cells you need for a minute of animation, but it's, well, Mike, how many cells did you ruin? I mean,
well,
let's just pull up that bad memory.
12 cells per second, times 16.
It was explained to me as a kid, and I don't know if this is accurate, but I believe it probably is, that in animation, most animators would do 12 per second because the film runs at 24 frames per second. So you know every other frame is a repeat. Disney didn't do that. Disney did 24 cells per second.
Wow.
That's why it's so fluid and better than any of the other animation of that is in competition with. And there was formidable competition for Disney in the early days. There was no guarantee that Walt Disney was going to emerge the animation titan. It very well could have been Fleischer Studios, which were right on Disney's heels.
Yeah.
And Disney was on their heels. You know, it was this horse race between Fleischer and Disney back in the early days.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I find all this very fascinating, and for precisely the reason that it has become this cultural fixation. And always looking to find where's the humanity, where's the art, where's the human touches in all of this. Why does it work? Where does it go wrong? That's what keeps me coming back. Really great book by Neil Gabler, by the way, about Walt Disney. It's like an 800-page tome. It's just called Walt Disney. It was written about 10 years ago, and it is fantastic. So that's one worth checking out. Very even-handed, by the way. It doesn't glorify him and it doesn't villainize him. There's other books that go too far in either direction. But I give Gabler's book the shout out.
Okay.
There is a book written by Robert Butler, who did our Disney retrospective at the library and is a film guy was a film guy for the Kansas City Star, I believe. But it's called Walt Disney in Missouri, and it's about his early life, with many pictures of places you could, if you happen to be in Missouri, that you could go visit. Also, if you're interested in early Disney, the Walt Disney Family Museum, the Walt Disney Museum in Marceline is really worth a visit. It's a tiny little thing, but it's really cool. I may have become a little fan crazed when we were there and scared some people, but it was really, really good.
That's great. Where is that? Marceline.
Marceline is, if you're from Kansas City and you head towards Hannibal, it's before you get to Hannibal. It's by Brookfield. Sorry, by Brookfield. Yeah. It's a little tiny town in the middle of nowhere. But it's worth going just for that. There's nothing else there. Eat before you go, or take snacks.
Is it a sanctioned Disney corporate thing, or how do they get around?
The Disney family has donated several things to this museum, but I think the town runs it. Really, I don't know that it's not a national park or anything like that, and it's not overtly a Disney corporate thing. If they have ties, they're not advertising it that way. It's very much, this is where he grew up. This is what we remember of him. And there are people who remember Walt Disney there. A lot of the docents and people who volunteer at the museum actually were children when they built the Walt Disney School, and there's a Walt Disney Park as well. And he came to open those things because he really felt a connection with this tiny Midwest town. It was his happiest moments of his childhood were there, apparently. So, yeah, that's where I became unhinged at that point, because the lady who was showing us around the museum actually had met Walt Disney. He had stayed in her house one time when he was there in town. And it was just, and yeah.
Fantastic.
It was embarrassing for everyone.
Wow.
But yes, it's like, can I shake your hand? I'm shaking the hand that shook Walt Disney's hand.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was a great moment for me.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like it.
Not so much for everyone else, but for me.
let's just go around and say our favorite moment, like single moment from any of these films we've talked about tonight. And hopefully we can come back and continue this, because you're continuing, Kristin, right? You're just going to keep watching Disney until you run out, aren't you?
Yep.
You're going to go through Moana?
Yep. We are up to Robin Hood. Robin Hood is our next film.
Okay.
But yeah, we'll keep going and yeah, up to Moana, and the next one out. There's another Frozen. There's a Frozen sequel in the works.
Correct.
I think there's a Zootopia sequel in the works. There's one called Coco coming out fairly shortly here.
That's Pixar.
Well, Disney Pixar.
Yeah, that's Pixar. I don't know. I don't know that.
We're going to go see it anyway.
Okay. Well, no, you should definitely see it. You should definitely see it.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, I don't know that it's on the Disney official list.
Okay. It might not be.
Yeah.
I don't know that, actually.
You don't have to write about it. You just have to see it. How about that?
Yeah. Okay, fine.
For me, my favorite moment talking about this, is there a more transfixing moment than Snow White when she's or not Snow White, Sleeping Beauty, Aurora, when she's under the spell, walking towards that needle, and her eyes are glazed, and that green, evil, magical, and she's just like zombie walking, my gosh, that is just so haunting, that shot. That is my vote. Mike, do you have one?
It's hard to say. The moments, that just stick out. In preparation for this, I rewatched the Pink Elephants on Parade, and I have to say that it's a lot less freaky now that I watch it. I enjoy it a lot more. But yeah, when I saw it as a kid, it was that was the cower behind the seat in front of you moment. But watching it as an adult, it's really a lot of fun. But if I had to pick out a moment, I'd probably go with Fantasia. Really, and it's not even a character moment. It's the abstract animation for the Takaton Few. That just really struck me at the time and really stuck with me. That because you go into a Disney movie expecting princesses and fairy tales and talking animals and just something just as weird and as abstractions on the screen. That was great. It reminds me a lot of other children's entertainment, Sesame Street, like the really early 1960s and 70s Sesame Street, where they got avant-garde filmmakers to make little films about counting. Scored by Philip Glass. This was Koyaanisqatsi stuff. Yeah. Like 6 years before Godfrey Rishu got his hands on it. So.
Right. No, absolutely. It's vibrating lines, just on screen for the longest time. Yeah. So, Kristin, do you have a moment to send up here?
Trying to get just one, really? Oh.
Well, just one. No, I mean, it doesn't have to be the one. I mean, we all have many.
Yeah, and I think I just put out like 2 or 3. So.
Yeah, Mike, you voted for the whole movie. That's not how this works. Yeah.
You break the rules, Mike. You're such an iconoclast.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. Probably the scene in Cinderella, it's scored, the song is Sing Sweet Nightingale, and she's scrubbing the floor and the bubbles that come up, and then she's reflected in the bubbles, and they merge and separate, and she's singing a duet with herself suddenly because there are 2 of her reflected in the bubbles. But the animation there is just gorgeous. And it's kind of a quiet moment with this character where you really, even in the midst of being so unhappy, she's happy.
Yeah, content.
Yes.
Finding a weird contentment.
And it's just gorgeous.
You're right.
The moment when Maleficent turns into a dragon is fabulous too. Now you shall deal with me, O Prince, and all the powers of hell.
Oh.
That's what she says, and it's great.
Oh.
Yeah. We know she's going to lose, but it's great.
Incredible. Yeah. So. Yeah, definitely seek out these films, folks, and watch them with new eyes. Watch them with new eyes. I think that's the key here. Look at them as films that were made by people and artists, and they brought to these ideas like Kristin's talking about with the bubbles. I mean, just what a great idea, So that's where the value, I think, really is and stays and will always be with these Disney films. Whatever Disney, the monolithic company, chooses to do with them in the future, because they will continue to do with them things. whatever happens there, it always has to come down to the movies. It always has to. And that's and I think there's some really, really great work that we've talked about tonight. So I think we'll forego the usual plug of other things because we have gone long here.
We can go longer. I can do this for hours.
Oh well, and we have. And sorry, folks. Now we'll check out here and we'll regroup. But we'll do this. The three of us will regroup for the Xerox era, the Dark era, and the Renaissance and beyond. When Kristin watches all of those movies. How about that?
We're getting there. Yep.
All right.
Absolutely. Sounds like fun.
I'm in.
All right. Well, Mike, thank you.
Well, thank you. And thank you, Kristin.
And coming up,
thank you both.
And thank you, Kristin. Yeah, it's always great to have you here. Mike, what we've got coming up in the future, we're going to do a show grappling with the recent Twin Peaks: The Return.
That's right. Next week, we're going to be doing a show based on a review of the new Star Trek.
Oh, right. That's next week, and then in 2 weeks, it's Twin Peaks. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, next week, another blast from the past. My old Trekkie friend Tom Riggs is going to be joining us for Star Trek Discovery review. And then in 2 weeks, it'll be me with Jeff Knight and John Gross discussing the new season of Twin Peaks and our cockamamie theories as to what the hell just happened.
Excellent. Excellent. Bring it on. So I can't listen to it because I'm actually going to watch it when I'm somehow able to, because now I am completely enamored with the original series. So I look forward to having the new one completely crush me and blow my mind and hating it.
Yes.
So no. So anyway, there you go, folks. This is ZekeTalk. ZekeTalk, an offshoot of ZekeFilm.org. You can go to our website, ZekeFilm.org, and read our reviews and articles about new films, new and old. That's what we do. We don't do a lot of nonsense. We don't do movie news. We don't do contests. We don't do gossip. We don't do a bunch of garbage. We just do our thoughtful content, and it is always there and always new. Lots of great stuff at ZekeFilm.org. And remember to subscribe to this show, this channel. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can get all the new episodes if you subscribe. And give us a nice review. That's always great. And thank you very much.
Happy trails, everyone.
All right.